Good morning. My name is Nancy McDowell. I'm a member of the Board of Trustees. I love that gong. It's just so beautiful. Welcome to all of you here on this Memorial Day weekend, and to those of you who are live streaming, good morning. A special welcome to visitors. We hope to get to know you at coffee hour across the road there. The worship team this morning is Reverend John Morehouse. Dawn Star Saris Borscheld is our Director of Lifespan Faith Development. Our worship associate is, wait a minute. Is it Reverend John? No. I couldn't help, I just had to do it one more time. One more time, see the shirts? Our worship associate is Bob Barker. Music is by our own music director, David Brown, on electric violin, right? And Jody Brown on the piano. We are Unitarian Universalists. We affirm and promote 8 principles. My selection today is the 6th one, the goal of world community with peace, liberty, and justice for all. And on this Memorial Day weekend, we acknowledge that we have a long way to go toward a world community. And now please silence your electric devices. And we have an announcement from our Vice President, Barbara Colton.
Good morning.
Good morning.
This is short. On behalf of the board, I wanted to share news of a new non-endowed MLUC fund. This year, thanks to the generosity and commitment of one of our members, and now 2 members, the generosity and commitment has made it possible for the board to introduce a new fund to support growing our mission, the Innovation Fund. Board-approved grants from the Innovation Fund will provide seed money, financial support for new, expanded, even experimental initiatives and programs that aim to expand the reach and deepen the impact of our mission into the wider community. Grants from the Innovation Fund will also provide funding for initiatives with the potential to deepen engagement here at the church in furthering the mission. The fund, there's no minimum for the fund. There's no minimum donation requirement for the fund, and growth of this fund expands our capacity to grow our ministries in strategic and innovative ways this coming year and beyond. Thank you.
And now, say together our mission statement. Together, we transform lives through love, service, and our welcoming faith.
Our chalice lighting this morning comes from the Reverend Jean Duval. Whether tears have fallen from your eyes this past week or gleeful laughter has spilled out of your smiling mouth, whether you are feeling brave or brokenhearted, defiant or defeated, fearsome or fearful, whether you have untold stories buried deep inside or stories that have been forced beyond the edges of comfort, you are beloved and you are welcome here. Now, if you'll stand in body or spirit to sing the opening hymn, number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Here is a story about Jesus, but also about two women. Once upon a time, Jesus was traveling around to preach and teach to people all over his country. And when he got to a new town, he would find a house to stay in, somebody who was interested in what he was doing and wanted to host him. And in this particular town, he stayed with a woman named Martha and her sister, Mary. And Martha wanted to be a good hostess. And so she cooked, and she cleaned, and she organized, and it was a lot of work. And Mary? Mary sat down at Jesus' feet and listened to him. It made her happy. She felt joyful. Martha was a little annoyed. Here she was doing all the work while Mary lazed around. So she went to Jesus and she asked him if he would please tell Mary that she should be helping Martha. What do you think Jesus said? I was not expecting that, but okay, yes, that is what he said. He said no. He said that what Mary was doing was more important. Maybe being present and feeling joy is more important than getting things done. Maybe. I personally feel a lot of sympathy for Martha. Getting things done is important, dang it. Are you more in sympathy with Martha or with Mary? Maybe the real truth is that both are important, that there is a balance to find between getting things done and finding joy. I'd like to invite children and youth to come to the McGinnis Room, where I hope they're going to find joy making art about trees for our summer art show with our art group folks.
Each week, we give half our collection to a local not-for-profit group. This month's recipient has been T&E Care. This organization outfits about 255 families each year with school supplies. They help these families send their children to school prepared to learn. By the way, they also still and always are looking for 24-count packs of Crayola crayons. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Grateful for the gifts we bring to the altar of our community, let us say together the affirmation of gratitude. Let us be grateful when we are able to give, for many do not have that privilege. Let us be grateful for all those who share their gifts, for we are enriched by their giving. And let us be grateful even for our needs, so that we may learn from the generosity of others.
It is our tradition to light candles of joys and concerns. And today we light a candle of concern for Massimo Agnosti, who died recently. Massimo, a teenager, was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. He faced his diagnosis and treatment with dignity and strength, working to comfort others through his work with Jersey for Kids, delivering sports memorabilia to other young people facing similar diagnoses. For Massimo Agnosti, his family, friends, and all those he touched in his short life, we hold you in our hearts. We light a candle of concern for Everett and Ann Keach, their 3 children, Allie, Steve, and Will, and their families. After entering the final stages of Parkinson's disease, Everett died on May 24th. Everett was a longtime supporter of MLUC, and Anne, affectionately known as the Clay Lady, has been an active member of MLUC for more than 40 years. For Everett, his wife Anne, and their family, we hold you in our hearts. I would like to light a candle of concern, particularly on this weekend, for all those across the world who are suffering and dying in the multitude of wars and violent confrontations around the world. For all of these, we hold you in our hearts. And finally, for all those joys and concerns that may be held deep in our hearts, for which there may be no adequate words, we hold you in our hearts.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Nancy. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jody. Thank you, ushers, tech team. And thank you all for coming out on a hot, humid day on Memorial Day weekend. You of great faith, Unitarian Universalists. I'm going to begin with a meditation. And I invite you now to sit back in your chair, to place your feet on the ground, to square up your shoulders a bit, and do that brave stance of the world. And breathe in slowly now. And breathe out. Breathe in, gentle now, and breathe out. Listen to your breath. Listen for another's breath. Whether you are here in the sanctuary or at home with a family member or a cat or at the local coffee shop, listen. And now I invite you to place your hand on your heart, or do so for another if they need help. And slowly breathe in, breathe out. Some of us hear with our ears the sounds we make and the sounds others make. Some of us hear with our eyes, watch lips and hands and arms and body movements. And some of us hear with our bodies, Feel vibration in the air and on our skin. Slowly now, breathe in, breathe out, and listen in the many ways you know how. As we breathe together, some of us on our own, some of us with help, so too do we live together. Gently, breathe in, breathe out. Together and apart, we are many and we are one. Breathe in, breathe out. Listen in the many ways you know how, as together we enter into the silence. Amen and blessed be. I'll begin with a reading from Scripture, not something I do very often, but today seems important, from the Gospel of Mark, the earliest testament. While he was in Bethany, reclining at the table of the home of Simon the leper, a woman came with an alabaster jar of expensive perfume made of pure nard, broke the jar, and poured the perfume over Jesus. And she then wiped his feet with her hair. Some of those present were indignant. They said, "Why this waste of perfume? It could have been enough for a year's worth of wages and money given to the poor." And they rebuked her harshly. "Leave her alone," said Jesus. "Why are you bothering her? She has done a beautiful thing to me. The poor you will have with you always, but you can only be with me for a short time." She did what she could. She poured perfume to prepare for my burial. Truly, I tell you, whenever the gospel is preached throughout the world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. The woman perfuming Jesus is a powerful image. As in so much of patriarchy, the woman goes unnamed, and we're hearing it 2,000 years later, which is very significant. The perfuming happened during Jesus' active ministry towards the poor. The woman might have been Mary of Magdala, but we don't know. What is important is that it was a woman, revised by patriarchy to become a prostitute, but in fact, quite possibly one of the disciples. The passage is powerful for another reason. This is a woman perfuming a man who she is not married to, presumably. And that itself was an outrageous and intimate act. In the strictly patrilineal world of the first century Palestine, this was a major taboo. And even if this woman was married to Jesus, and we don't know that, the event was far too public. But then again, Jesus wasn't known for his subtlety. More importantly is that the woman is mentioned at all. Remember, this is the first gospel, the Gospel of Mark, written about 65 to 70 years CE. This is the first generation after Jesus has died. For a woman to be mentioned and for a woman to be retold of the story again and again means very much, according to many biblical scholars, that this is quite real. In fact, at his death, it was only the women who remained with him, if you remember. The disciples all fled for the hills. Not me, not it. Peter would betray Jesus 3 times. Even more powerful was the relationship Jesus drew between helping the poor and comforting the leader. And this dichotomy, which for some of us might seem like the disciples were on the right side. They could have used that perfume for feeding the poor. But Jesus was not dismissing poverty in the state of nature. Remember that his message was apocalyptic. It was a revolution that was coming. It was a revolution when the first shall be last and the last shall be first. He knew the brutality of the Roman Empire. He knew how desperately poor people were. But what he was remembering here, and this is important, what he was remembering here is that there needs to be beauty in the midst of struggle. Give us bread, but give us roses too, goes the protest song. It takes both beauty and compassion to change the world. More importantly for me is the fact that Jesus specifically praises her and her work as something worthy to be memorialized into the future, as if to remind us all of how important it was to care for one another in the midst of the larger struggle of our lives. Women have always been a part of the story. And so this Memorial Day Sunday, the Sunday closest to Memorial Day, I want to remember these women, especially those of the Bible who helped us to see living as something we do with both strength and grace, grit and grace. This Sunday, I want us to recall who left us with the wisdom that there's more to life than brute strength and power politique. This Sunday, I want us to remember that women are half the human race. Long subjugated, long suffering, most notably in the horrific assaults on female bodily autonomy and these abortion bans, which just seem to get worse and worse. Not only are they killing women, but they're subjecting them to forced motherhood, itself a form of enslavement. Can you hear me on this? Let me begin with Mary Magdalene. I love this picture of Mary. There it is. It's from a movie, I'm told, but I think it speaks to the pathos of her life. She is maligned in the Christian church as a repentant prostitute. What a snow job. Mary of Magdala, she was Mary of a place, and to get that title, you usually had to have some means, was not a prostitute. As far as biblical scholars can unearth now, she was a landowner, which was very rare in the Jewish state. And possibly she was bankrolling Jesus' entire ministry. She was critical to the success of this. Mary the Magdalene, or Mary of Magdala, I think mothered the entire movement, if you ask me. Indeed, the ethos of love and radical acceptance, despite the condemnation and the regular condemnation of Jesus' male associates. Mary of Magdala represents the creative power of women, the divine feminine. What's confusing about the Jesus story are there's so many Marys. The Marys just keep coming. His mother was named Mary, and she was far from a demure virgin. Think about it, friends. She had the gumption to carry Jesus. First of all, think about that. Even if it was not divinely inspired, to find out that your son is the living apostle of God must have been, well, a heavy burden to bear. She carries Jesus to term. She gives birth to him in the wild. In that Christmas story, I know we all have the cozy manger. Just think cold cave with animals. That's a little closer to the truth. She was decidedly loyal to the end, as mothers often are, and she'll be remembered for her tenacity and love and holding the very body of her son so powerfully portrayed in Michelangelo's Pieta. I think now of the black and brown mothers who hold their sons. There is Hagar, the Egyptian enslaved by Abraham and his wife Sarah, the one who is forced to have sex with Abraham because Sarah can't bear a child, although she eventually does bear Isaac. Hagar bears Ishmael, who's really Abraham's first son. There's a whole other thing about second sons in the Bible. We'll get to that at some point. But Hagar, because she was of a slaved class, an enslaved class, she was likely of darker complexion, as was Ishmael. And Sarah grows jealous. Jealousy is a big theme in the Bible. Sarah grows jealous of Hagar because Abraham just loves this little kid. And so she banishes Hagar and her son Ishmael into the desert to die. Just when Hagar thought she was going to die, God intervenes once again, and a spring springs up at the feet of the child. It is said that Hagar and Ishmael migrate to Mecca and become the founding lineage of Islam. Hagar leaves us with the memory of survival and resourcefulness. And there are many others. Esther sleeps with a pagan king to save her people. Miriam, the older sister to Moses, saves his life by floating him down the Nile in a basket and finds his way out of no way to become prince of Egypt, and then forcing Pharaoh to flee the enslaved Jews. These women carry collective memories and the best of what women can do despite intense patriarchy around them. I've long been a fan of Rachel Evans. Rachel Held Evans is her name, a brilliant young pastor and writer who died tragically just a few years ago at the age of 37. In her powerful book, Wholehearted Faith, she writes, "I am religious because of Mary, the mother of Jesus, and Mary's midwife, who is unnamed, and Mary's foremothers. I am religious because of a sex worker and a refugee, assault survivors in the biblical story who did what they needed to do to keep their faith. I am religious because of Mary's cousin Elizabeth, herself subjected to years of cruel speculation because her reproductive experience did not align with patriarchal norms, which were all created by men. I am religious because of Hagar, enslaved and forcibly impregnated to bear the son Ishmael to become the founder of Islam. In memory of these brave biblical women and, of course, the billions more who have followed to create our future, I dedicate this today to them. I dedicate our congregation's work to them, for the right of women to control their own bodies, for the right to an abortion, for the right to reproductive justice, for the right to determine their own future. If these brave women of the ancient world could strive against the rule of men, so too can we stand with those who need us now. Can I get an amen? In her book, in memory of her, the feminist scholar Elizabeth Schussler Fiorenza examines what we remember of women and what the Bible leaves out. Why does the Bible mention some women and not others? Is it because the memories of those mentioned are so powerful the patriarchs simply could not dismiss their presence? And yet so much more to learn, such as in the classic The Red Tent, that powerful book about women which reminds us that there were female prophets who gave strength and compassion to this ancient world fraught with violence. And there are women now who are giving voice to the voiceless. And here, friends, here in our congregation, we honor our ancestors as well. Those among our own saints, shall we call them. We remember them because we are still incomplete despite their work on this planet. Their pains, their failures, their joys, their triumphs as well. Last night, I walked through the memorial garden, as I often do in the evening, and I sat down at the bench, and I look around me, and I look at all the nameplates of all the women of this church who have bared the responsibility, the day-to-day work of the church. I see plates that have women's names and then children's names underneath them because they have died while they were still alive. I think today, and I honor today, such luminaries as Sally Tweedy, Dell's wife. Dell, the famous Dell, everyone knew Dell, not so much Sally. I knew Sally. I loved Sally. I thought Sally was the hoot. I thought Dell was too serious. Well, friends, Sally Tweedy just left the church $122,000. That's not just why we remember her, but how much she cared about this place. And we will complete them by moving forward in the world in which we live, right? I believe in the spirit of the divine feminine which permeates our faith. I think that the wonderful reason that we are here today is because women and men have held the center of our space and our faith together. And for all the changes that are happening in the world and in Unitarian Universalism, let's face it, friends, Unitarian Universalism wouldn't be here if you hadn't been here all along. I never forget that. Let us not forget that from our past, we gather strength to move forward, to identify with the work of the church, with the mystics and the hardworking Marthas of the world. One of my spiritual heroes is the 16th century mystic Teresa of Avila, whose interior understanding of faith brought forward the power of the feminine amidst a patriarchal world. Hers was not an easy life. She was the granddaughter of Jews, conversos, who had traded their Jewish identity for a Catholic identity or face exile or death. Apparently, she was interviewed, shall we say, by the Spanish Inquisition. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition. Somebody got that joke. Anyway, she charmed them all, and they blessed her work. She famously wrote, and in one of my favorite lines, she wrote, "God lives among the pots and pans of everyday life." She illuminated darkness that led to inner knowledge, a knowledge that could lead to ecstasy, as Bernini portrays in his famous sculpture. The divine feminine is in our best impulse towards the generosity and compassion that we show other people and those within our community. And it is often found in the darkness. In the Bible, of course, in the first story of the Genesis, God calmed the deep. That deep that God calmed and then made the heavens and the earth, that water, that dark water, was the divine feminine. Because darkness is part of the divine feminine, not darkness in an evil sense, but darkness in the mysterious, moist, imaginative, emotional sense. The dark place is the inner life of the soul, the quiet place. One of Teresa of Avila's great friends was John of the Cross, who's the one who coined that phrase, the dark night of the soul, himself having lived through so much darkness. He was deeply influenced by her. To quiet this divine energy is to say to the women of the world and to say the memory of them is that we don't believe in you anymore, but I do, and you will, because you're here. Because you're here and because we enter into knowing the unknowable, we do this. Last Tuesday, I reported to the board some of my findings as we're completing our first year together in this developmental ministry. I see great potential here. I don't need to tell you that. Our shared ministry has made this place come alive in ways that I think some of us just frankly can't believe. Or when's the other shoe going to drop? Or what's next? We're building a public presence, and we'll do much more of that. And we're trying to create a new ministry of engagement. But I honestly also reported to them that there is here vestiges of patriarchy. For while the women of the church do the day-to-day ministry, they have been, at least in the past, if not now, deferential to men as leaders. Not all, and I certainly don't mean my present board of directors. All strong women, thank you. But I do find this in the culture. And I find this especially true of the senior ministers, all of whom have been men, including me. Which, of course, one of you noted. Whatever you do, don't get another white man. I have studied these men, and I honor them as colleagues, and they have done good work. And what I want to say is not to be a detriment to what they've done, because a lot of what they had was a system they were dealing with. But you've been used to senior ministers who are in command and control. Not always, but in large part. You see, by now, if you haven't gotten it, that's not my leadership style, not my jam. I'm not command and control. I tried that for about 15 years, and I can tell you it ended disastrously. That and the fact that the women in my life would not let me forget that I was not in command and control. The command and control doesn't work. Women have been teaching me that the journey is to hold up others and empower them so that they can do the work. Men and women and other folks. The divine power in our congregation is in our people. Men, women, non-binary. It's less command and control, and it's more consult and collaborate, if you get what I'm saying. So this Memorial Day, armistice to World War I, with its memories of war and moral injury which follows, which is so prevalent today. This day, as migrants seeking safety across our borders, this day when so much seems wrong, this is the invitation we have to complete the work of the mothers, to complete the work of women and men who came before. Will we stand with them? Will we stand for this form of immortality that lives on? Are for words from Leslie Takahashi. In the daily weave of our lives, she wrote, those who have died are still strong and guiding threads. Theirs is the golden glimmer of perhaps the brilliant red or a melancholy blue. Still, they are part of the whole cloth of our lives. They are the ancestors who have gone before. And through this, we know immortality. In the hour-to-hour rush of our daily tasks, they have traveled with us through something and taught us what is now ours to do. Through something that they loved, which is now ours to carry out. Through something that we shared, which is now ours. Through this, we know immortality. In the minute-to-minute grasp of where we are, we remember the joys of our departed, and we give them what we hold of hope. The sorrows we knew together with what they taught us about strength, the life shared that is now ours to steward. Through this, we know immortality. In the second-to-second pulse of life, we sense the spirit of those who have loved and lost. The presence is too shy for naming, too amorphous for full knowing, and yet as real as the days we share. And through this, we know immortality. They are the most remembered, for what our lives are is because of them. Their words and wisdom our guide, their humor our relief, their restless concern for the world still our charge. And through this we know immortality. My beloveds, women have been leading the way for a long time, noticing the world, calling us outward from our minor lives with tenacity and courage and resourcefulness and compassion ever onward. I want to close with these words from my favorite poet, Alice Fryman. Lay out your life in a glass petri dish. Sniff at the specimens. Listen to the trees and the furnaces and the refrigerators of those you have lost and loved. Examine moss and starts and rats and guns and all the droppings of animals. Touch the dead, but hold the living. Walk around the block, blank with paper and a green pen until you write from dizziness and suck the pit of an apricot, and if it gives way to the albino seed of bitterness, chew it as your ancestors did. Curl up, brown recluse in a nautilus, and weave a web and then destroy it. Clean the house, any house, mow the lawn, any lawn, scrub the baseboards of your enemies. Rifle through your lover's wallet, his dresser drawer, eat the betrayal caught between your teeth, bitter taste of generations before. Tie your father up, tie all the fathers to the stake, and bang at the rock of their chest until it opens, and then weep and take them home. Seduce a priest. Look for a surgeon. The world is here because of those who came before you, and it will follow because you are here. So may it be, and amen. Our closing hymn is number 126, Thy Fount of Every Blessing. Please rise in body or spirit. Blessed are we, the chalice lighters of resistance, justice, love, and faith. Blessed are we, the heretics, the outcasts, the walkers of our own way. Blessed are we, the border crossers, the refugees, the migrants, the poor, the wanderers, and blessed are we, for this is our beloved community, and this is who we are. Now the service truly begins, and please remain seated for the postlude.